Hey my nerds, and welcome back. It's another world building special this week, and this time we're exploring the subject of food in fantasy. So let's get on with it. Food is one of the big themes an author can focus on when building their world. Like many of the other big themes, it's not essential to do more than a cursory pass for your world, but if you choose to delve deeper into it, then it's one of the best for helping distinguish your story from others. Why? Because no matter what plotline your story ends up following, most of your characters find that food is essential, so it can easily come up in your story. So what should you consider if you're using food as a focus for your world building? The first place to start is with the climate of your world, since this will obviously have huge implications for what types of food will be available. You'll not only need to think about the climate of the time period your story is based in, but also what the climate was like in the years prior, since this will affect the types of food that have been able to develop over the years. You next need to figure out what kinds of food exist. I had lots of fun with this for Sakaran Nights, since most of the substance for that world comes from various forms of different mushrooms that are grown down there. So don't feel like you're limited to the typical animals, vegetables, legumes, grains, and fruit sources that we have in our world. The more outside of the box you go with this, the more likely you are to come up with other aspects of your world to support their use as a source of food. But try to make sure that you vary your types of food a bit too. If you have a civilization that only lives off rabbit, then they're going to be in trouble nutritionally quite quickly. It's a problem called protein poisoning, and it happens because the rabbit is a very lean source of meat, so you can't consume rabbit as the only source of food for a prolonged period of time. For that reason, mix up your foods a bit, unless your intention is to deliberately make your population less healthy. Once you have that, your next question should be how the food ecosystem there works. Does your civilization forage, farm, hunt, a mixture of all three? These are the three ways food has traditionally been obtained over the years. Now, since this is a video about fantasy world building, I suppose we can always add in the magical conjuring of food to the list, but there is an argument to say that that's just very cool farming, so let's leave it in that category. Once you have all of that, your next question is to figure out where and how are they found. A nice additional question to ask yourself here is, how dangerous is this method of food acquisition? The answer could easily be a source of conflict in your story. Say, for example, if you have a vegetable that only grows in a very hard to reach location, or if you have very similar looking poisonous counterparts to that fruit that everyone loves as a delicacy. And don't forget to think about the aids that the people in the civilization have for their foraging, farming, or hunting. These could be technological or magical. For hunting, for example, do you have a magic that allows you to know where living creatures are so you can find them more easily and kill them more easily? Tech-wise, it might be the equivalent of a pair of thermal vision goggles. For foraging, if the food grows in a very high up place, then do you have magic to let you fly up there to get it? Or magic to let you bring it down to you? For farming, do you have weather reports that allow you to know when and what to plant? I have a magic system in one of my worlds that allows people to see into the future, and you can bet that farmers in that world are using it to determine what kind of crops will do well that year and when to plant them. This conveys a huge advantage on their civilization over that of their non-future seeing neighbours, since this means that their country has a more secure source of food and is better set up to make money through the trade of that resource. So once you've figured all of that, the when, the how much of your food, the next is to consider how sustainable these practices are. Different factors can affect all of them, so identify the dependencies for your world. For example, whether food is farmed, foraged, or hunted, the weather will have a huge impact on this source of food. If there is a long period of drought, then crops die and animals die and food becomes scarcer. Another dependency is to consider sustainability. Animals get overhunted, wild food gets overgrazed, land gets overfarmed. What about means of food preservation? Magic is a great device here, since magic can get around physical limitations. Say you have the ability to stop time, then you can theoretically keep food preserved forever. If you can control the weather or temperature, then you can make ice form so that it can be used for preserving food for the long term. Once you have all of this, now comes the fun bit. It's time to start imagining a few different meals for your culture. Give these meals names and figure out how they smell, how much effort goes into their preparation, What groups in your society tend to prepare them? What stigmas or customs are associated with certain meals? Try also to link it back to earlier bits of world building you've done here if you can. Say you have some foods that are harder to forage, then are they more expensive? Do they confer greater status upon those who eat those meals? You can also think about how the meals are prepared, since this will help you come up with descriptions for your meal. Like if your people are using citrus juices to acid bath their meats, then that will give you a great sense of the flavour that will induce. If they're cooking it on an open fire, then you can describe the charredness to the meat. If they're boiling them in a hot spring, I don't know. I don't know what boiled hot spring food tastes like. You can get really inventive with this one, and the more inventive your world is going to seem as a result of doing so. Plus, it will give you great action tags to use when your characters are having a DMC as one of them prepares a meal, and this will help stop the conversation seeming like a bunch of talking heads who aren't doing anything. Finally, if you really want to get into it, spare a moment to think about the impact of the food on your society. What diseases do people get from badly prepared dishes? What diseases might they be more susceptible to because of a particular food source in their diet, or absence of a particular food source in their diet? Think lack of green beans or too much red meat. Societies with less healthy dietary habits will have all sorts of interesting features that can affect the society's death statistics, which we talked about in the death fantasy videos, so go and watch that if you want to find out about how all of these bits of world building join together. It's all linked, my friends. So there you have it. Have fun diving into this as a way of distinguishing your world. I'm feeling a bit peckish now, so I'm off to make dinner. Bye, my nerds!